A one-of-a-kind music program in Portland, Maine is helping LGBTQ seniors turn their memories into melody. McKenna Hadley-Burke meets a 91-year-old who turned a complicated life into a 5-minute song.
I don't like to advertise it, but I'm kind of an old-school romantic. There's something about crooner music from the 40s and 50s that I adore. Billie Holiday, Doris Day, Etta James, Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole. They're like Hallmark cards for your ears, sappy and comforting. But the stories in those songs were limited and framed around only one kind of love. Growing up with two moms, I realized that most mainstream music did not tell a love story like theirs. My moms are among a generation of LGBTQ members who couldn't find themselves in the lyrics playing over the radio. In Portland, Maine, a group of musicians are giving some lyrical agency back to the older LGBTQ community. Through a program called Lifesongs, seniors are reclaiming the music they love by writing their own song based on their own life and stories of learning, loss, and of course, love.
You managed to find it all on your own.
I went to meet one of the Lifesongs participants at his home in Boston.
Will you start by telling me your name,
Stanley Sayer,
your age?
91
Really?
and a quarter.
Stanley wrote and performed his song earlier this year.
I thought that my song ought to be like a patter song, which is really telling a story.
The idea for the Lifesongs Project came from Matthew Smith, a cellist for Palaver Strings. The project spoke to Matt both professionally and personally.
Me being a gay person, I was really interested in forming a project with older gay folks. I mean, everyone has a story to tell, but specifically for me, the older gay generation, tapping into those stories, I felt like was just rich for songwriting and music.
Through the course of the songwriting process, Stanley condensed 91 complicated years into 5 minutes and 16 seconds of lyrics and melody. Stanley's story and his song begin in West Texas.
I lived in my own world of cinema dreams as a young Texas boy in a sepia town.
The place was really, really depressing. You know, when I said a sepia town, it is sepia.
But there was also a light in Stanley's life during those years in Texas that came in the form of a boy named Alexander.
Alexander, my first friend, you glowed like a star. I wrapped up my feelings and hid them away so that I wouldn't lose you and return to gray.
I met Alexander in the Baptist Sunday school, and he was the first real friend that I ever had. The first, outside the family, the first person that I ever loved. But of course, I never declared any of this because somehow I knew it was wrong, but I didn't even know what it was.
When Stanley was growing up, homosexuality wasn't just taboo, it was feared. To be gay was to be deviant.
When I was young, I didn't know what gay was. I had no idea what it was. I found out and I liked it. I was about 9 years old and I knew that I liked girls, but I really and truly, felt attracted to boys.
When Stanley was a young adult, dating someone of the same sex was dangerous. In the 1940s and 50s, homosexuality was seen as a growing threat. One extreme example is the sex perversion elimination program that began in 1947. During this time, the U.S. Park Police started targeting gay men in Washington, D.C. public parks. Any men deemed suspicious could be arrested and detained. But this didn't stop the wave of young people who felt repressed and restricted in their rural hometowns from heading to the big cities. At 22, Stanley headed to New York.
From the big silver screens, New York called my name. Bustling actors, musicians, and all who sought fame.
New York was like a dreamland to Stanley.
The way the city looked, the movement, the people, the music, the art, the museums, the theaters, everything about it was just wonderful. I can remember going to Philharmonic concerts. Now, mind you, this was in the afternoon for 75 cents.
But it wasn't just music, movies, and museums that brought Stanley to New York.
I was going there hoping, let's say, hoping that I would find someone that I really and truly, could love and live with. I wanted a family. It didn't mean children. I wanted a human being that I could be with, that I could love and who would love me.
Even in this new place, full of people and possibilities, Stanley's dating life still felt restrained.
I wanted to be sure that this person wanted me. I was not going to make sexual advances towards someone that I didn't know for sure would be willing to accept them. So that was what my life was like.
Stanley moved to New York in 1950. 2 years later, the American Psychiatric Association listed homosexuality as a mental disorder. The following year, President Eisenhower signed an executive order banning the federal government from hiring suspected homosexuals. Thousands of people lost their jobs. Those that avoided detection had to step even further into the closet. Suicide rates spiked. That's the world Stanley was living in when he met Barbara.
She loved me, and she was aware, do you understand, that I had had gay relationships.
Stanley and Barbara were part of the same friend group. She'd been on the sidelines watching Stanley search for love for quite a while. Their lack of relationship wasn't from lack of love.
I loved her, even sexually, I loved her, but I still felt as though I should, be with a man. Barbara was quite aware of this for years, but she also knew that I had never found anybody that I wanted to be with. I wanted relationships, and close, intimate relationships. And this just didn't happen. With Barbara, it did happen. We were close, we were intimate. So then I said, all right, let's get married.
Bought a house, had adventures, and our daughter was born. For 50 good years we had barely a thorn. But then the darkness descended as dementia appeared.
Barbara was diagnosed with dementia in the last 10 years of her life.
Toward the end, she died, by the way, in our apartment. I did not send her to a hospital. I kept her right there. But with hospice, I had to every hour to give her morphine. The last time it was me, I went in the morning and I gave her the morphine, and I didn't leave right away, which is what I usually did after giving her the morphine, but I just stayed around for a minute, and she hadn't spoken for at least 2 weeks, I guess. But her lips began to move. She didn't really make any sound, but it was like she was trying to say something. And I went over to her and I said, Barbara, you don't have to stay. You can go if you want to. You'll always live in my heart. And she took her last breath and died.
For the first time in over 50 years, Stanley was alone again. After a lifetime of shared meals and annoying habits, morning routines, and inside jokes, he had to start from scratch.
I grieved all the time. I would burst into tears, just suddenly, for no reason if I thought about something.
But Stanley refused to let his grief run his life. He figured if he was going to be alone, he wasn't going to just sit around. So he booked a trip overseas. Before a trip to Madrid, a friend put him in touch with a local named Alfonso.
And he said, if you're not busy this evening, I can take you for a drink.
Over gin and tonics, in a hotel garden in Spain, Stanley felt a spark of possibility.
I really, thought this is an absolutely wonderful human being, and isn't it nice to have met him, and I could love this person.
Alfonso drove them back to the apartment building where Stanley was staying and walked him to the lobby.
And he kissed me. And I was so shocked I didn't know what to do. We said goodnight. I thought, well, isn't that nice? I'll never see him again.
On the day Stanley was scheduled to leave, Alfonso left a message for him.
Tell him not to leave. I'll take him to the airport.
Love appears any moment right out of the blue. Wherever life leads you, there's a red rose for you.
At 91 and a quarter, Stanley's found himself in the encore of his love story.
Loving him makes me feel truly alive.
In 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage in all 50 states. But even in the face of great progress, Stanley is cautious.
I don't tell people and I don't discuss it, but, I don't hide it. I think it's terrible the way that a huge amount of people think about gay people. They probably treat them better today because of political correctness. But in their hearts, I don't think we're accepted at all. I really don't think so.
I grew up listening to my moms tell me stories about how their church and their families ostracized them for their sexuality. But my experience was unique. Most of my generation was not raised with stories like theirs. Converting stories into song is a way to ensure that we don't forget. My moms may never have a life song, but Stanley does. I asked Stanley if he'll put on a record for us. He picks a song from the musical Pal Joey. And of course, it's a love song.
If they asked me, I could write a book.
For the SALT Institute for Documentary Studies, I'm McKenna Hadley-Burke. Additional music in this piece by Blue Dot Sessions.